Good morning. Thank you for joining the May 31st, 2018 VOLTHA call. We are recording this session so we can post it later to the VOLTHA playlist. So please keep that in mind during any discussions and presentations. And with that, we will start today's meeting. And Shad, I do see you on. We had a request from you to add another item to the agenda, and I thought actually we should probably cover that one first. And so that's going over the list of modules that's on the wiki, and then the owners for those, and then there were several significant gaps that were identified. And so we'll be seeing if we can find some owners to take on that responsibility.
I'm just wondering, I'm just wondering why we want to look at, because those are simple like classes. I thought the owner list was about components like the core, the adapters, the different portions. Why do you want to go at the module level? Like VOLTHA core, the ownership was always myself and Sergio. So are we talking about VOLTHA core, or are we talking about individual aspect of the module layer, like an owner for flow decomposer, an owner for adapter interface, an owner for adapter agent? This doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so Ken, I'm okay. I mean, so if you are the owner, if you and Sergio are the owner, then I have a lot of I think open issues that I think at ONF we have identified, and if you're the owner, that's great. So we'll raise the JIRAs for these individual items, and we'll assign them to you.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's, I think there's one differentiation that we need to make is like somebody can own a component doesn't mean other people can contribute to it. Like for example, if a JIRA is raised,
yeah,
the owner will be like maybe the person reviewing it, they can contribute to it. But if somebody else wants to contribute the code, for sure, by all means, contribute to it.
Right. So I lately I haven't seen any development in this areas with respect to some certain gaps, which I think we all know which are there, and which I can list out in a later email. So I mean, Sienna has been contributing to HA, but not in this area really. I mean, unless it's related to HA. So
no, we created those. We created this area, so it's like
exactly
for a long time.
Creation doesn't mean that ownership is by default. You stay with it unless it's being actively maintained. So if that's the case, that's fine.
Yeah, one reason why you're not seeing a lot of updates in that area at this time is because we are segregating the core between the main function of the core and the adapters. So until we do that, it's many of those what you're seeing in that list. There will be changes there. In some cases, quite significant changes. So once we do so, we start the segregation. Then there will be more updates you will see there.
So Ken, my opinion is that the segregation of the adapters from the core to me is a lower priority than basic functionality, so I see a lot of work required in the flow decomposer. I see, for example, the flow delete, which I just sent an email yesterday. There's several gaps in the device agent logic, and Jono from ONF who's looking at this, I don't know whether he's on the call, but he can chip in as well. There's a lot of architectural issues between in the adapter interface, what happens in the adapter versus what happens in the core. I don't think anybody's looking at this from the Sienna side. So if you guys want to take ownership of it, we'll raise JIRA items and assign them.
For sure. Like
again, I don't see the containerization for me, the second priority compared to functionality and the sanity of the architecture. And I see a gap in both these areas, in basic features, basic functionality, and the sanity of the architecture. I can come up with the list of items to substantiate my claims. So to me, containerization, I mean, if you're saying that we are working on containerization and that's why we are not working on these basic features because we want to do them after containerization, to me, I think we have the priorities wrong. But that's my opinion. And if you want to maintain ownership and actively work on this, I can raise the JIRAs and I can prioritize them. And for me, the priority would be before containerization. So that's it. I don't want to take too much time here.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, do we want to separate out the adapters from the core in terms of a functional area, or I mean, why are they all together? I guess.
Well, once the core is separated, there will be some areas that will go into adapters and some areas that will remain in the core. So at this time, because we're doing the containerization, there's some aspect of, even if we go and make changes in the core, maybe some of those changes will no longer be valid once we containerize everything. So it's a question of priority. Like chat's priority is more the functionality changes, and we see like doing the containerization first and then make those changes. Well, it's up to the community to decide. But in terms of the original questions, in terms of ownership, yes, we are the ownership of the VOLTHA core.
This is Bill. This is Bill Hurst, by the way.
The flow remove that I raised a JIRA yesterday. To me, that's a very basic feature. I cannot remove or add a single flow. The VOLTHA core cannot handle it. For a single add or a single flow delete, it actually sends down the entire flow table. So that's not a bug. It's basically we just don't have that functionality.
Yeah, it was not built.
Exactly. I'm not calling it a bug. I'm calling it a feature.
It is a feature.
I think this feature is, and some other features like this are much higher priority than containerization. So can Ciena prioritize these before containerization, or does it have the resource to work on both of these? If it does, well and great. If it doesn't, then I think we should let others take ownership over here, and that's where I say. You said we can contribute code is fine, but I think if somebody is willing to devote resources to it, I think then module ownership also should be discussed at that point.
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I heard a comment. This is Bill, by the way, Bill Hurst. I heard a comment about, I'm going to paraphrase, the sanity of the architecture. So I'm curious, what is the contention point?
So, the several things that adapters do. Each adapter does differently, which is, I can give you one instance. Is the adapters create logical devices and do a lot of open flowish kind of things, and it's duplicated in all adapters. This kind of thing, I think we believe from our own, if we've looked at the architecture, and we think that this should be happening in the core. When a device is disabled, for example, an OLT is disabled. I'm giving you a second example, and when an OLT is disabled,
can I ask for clarity on that first example? When you say core, does that now mean NEM?
No. Core is in VOLTHA is NEM is outside of VOLTHA. VOLTHA, you can think of VOLTHA as one single monolithic process. It's actually a single thread. that runs through, and there is a common part of it which is called a VOLTHA core, and then there are adapters which deal with each particular hardware device. The adapters sit at the southbound, and the core talks to the northbound.
You said core. I thought you said cord. Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I think then.
So, but on this, at least on this particular issue about deleting flow, I don't see this has any conflict with what the containerization is doing.
No, Sean, the conflict is that if Sienna is saying that we will do it only after the containerization is done, but we need this immediately.
Right.
So actually, Ken did say.
Let's just give me so first of all, who decided that priority is more important than containerization? You did on your own. This is a community, right?
Right. So Sergio,
as a community, the decisions should be made by the community, not by ONF on their own. Okay.
Yes, Sergio. I said this is my opinion. My opinion
but
is
you're not only saying it's your opinion, you're putting into question the ownership of the core, which has been with us since day one. We designed the freaking thing. 95% of the contributions have come from us. Okay. And now you're saying, oh, well, if you guys can't do this thing that I have the opinion is a higher priority, then we need to question the ownership of the core. That makes no sense to me. This is a hijack. This is supposed to be a community, not a dictatorship. And I'm getting tired of the dictatorship attitude that I'm seeing from the ONF for the last 3 or 4 TSTs.
Okay,
right?
I think we need to take a step back here.
Right.
And
my question is.
Yeah, I want to reply to this, Sergio.
Yeah, my question is this, right? So, I'm very case specific, right? So, if this is important, but so what I'm trying to say is, does containerization and this one cannot happen at the same time, particularly for this JIRA. If they can, and if Jano is working on it, then maybe we can go ahead and implement this one. Then Sienna has a prior. I understand the prioritization of the containerization. So Sienna will focus on the work on that part, and as long as this one doesn't impair, both tasks doesn't impair each other, why can't we do that simultaneously? And I think the JIRA ticket can be assigned to Jano without the approval of Sienna, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Like we are, like I said earlier, like we are the module owner of the core, and will approve things that are submitted into the core. But when it's come to JIRA's work, anybody that we want to contribute and add content to the core, then go ahead and add content. There's no problem there.
So that's how I see it. Of course, if some of the work will impact containerization, then we will discuss that. But right now, I don't see this one has any dependency of each other. So
yeah, this specific use case, yes, you're right, has no specific.
Also, this JIRA is marked as a blocker. That means code can't actually complete without it, or is this something you can work around? Right? A blocker is a really high thing, which means something just doesn't work. But this fact that it only does the bulk updates has been there for a while, and adapters have been working. So I'm trying to understand: is this a blocker, or is this a high priority? Because there is a distinction, and I think that needs to be made. By the way,
Sergio, it's a blocker. It's a blocker because flow removals. Like if I had to remove a subscriber from ONOS, that trickles down to a flow delete, and And what that happens is that flow delete in the core translates to entire flow table update coming down to the adapter. So if I have 10 flows,
but that's not a blocker because it doesn't stop anything from working. All it is an inefficient implementation of the removal of flow.
No. It stops me from removing subscribers. So you can check in anytime you can, but you can't.
Actually, you can check if flows go missing. So I would probably agree with David. It might not be a blocker as in working, but I think it would be a high priority.
High priority item. Like this is not
Kip, how would you check that? That means adapter is kind of storing all the flows. I mean, how would you check it?
Oh, it's very easy. As you get a flow update, basically create a set of the flow IDs that you get from that update, and then check it to the previous one and see what the difference is. This is simple.
We don't want to keep any state in the adapters. That's our kind of a stake in the ground here in the architecture. We don't want to keep any state in the adapters. So I don't want to store any flow IDs or any flow information in my adapter.
State in the adapters needs to be addressed. I agree. There should not be any what I call persistent state. But again, state or runtime state in any component will exist and is fine. It just needs to be recoverable. So when you say no state in the adapter, I think we need to dig into what you mean there, because it's okay to have that runtime state.
Yeah, so I can downgrade it from a blocker to a high priority, but if that's what. But I think we are just getting around over here with bad design.
I get your point, and I get that it's very important to you, but there's a distinct meaning for blocker, and I think we should adhere to that. And I get it's a high priority object, or JIRA, and we want to get it implemented, but I think we want to make sure that this isn't stopping everything, and it's not.
So Sienna, so if this one got assigned to ONF and they can continue to work on this one without interfering in your work, right? You can?
Yeah, for sure. Because this is a separate component, so it can be done as separate.
Okay.
What needs to be
containerization?
done?
Sorry.
But what I'm getting at is I hear clearly, that you guys are on the same page now. It's not a blocker, but does ONF still have a need for some assistance? Because I'm surprised it would get this heated without there being a serious need. So I'm curious if Sienna can't support the need. Is there just somebody else who could assist in the need, or is it a Sienna only thing?
Bill, I don't think this is Sienna only thing. I think it's just I think ONF should have the resource to resolve this ticket.
Okay. Okay.
Also, just from Redis's perspective, this obviously it's not a blocker from system operating in certain circumstances, but we're seeing from a scalability testing perspective that there are some performance impacts associated with the bulk update. So obviously that if you could do like an individual update, that may help out with scalability perspectives. I don't know if anyone else has seen anything like that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's necessarily saying that individual flow updates, deletes aren't a good thing. It's just a matter of getting the work prioritized, queued up.
Right. Yeah. So I think we got at least a temporary resolution on this one. So Shad, let's reduce that to a high priority. If you want to keep highest or whatever, I think that'll be fine too. And then is Jono going to work on this one? Is he already start working on it?
No, Sean, I don't think ONF is. I mean, we're going to implement the workaround in the adapter, which is store the flows. But I don't think we're going to look into the core aspect of this, unless Jono wants to volunteer. I'm not speaking for him. I'm not going to be looking at the core thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go ahead and drop the priority down. I think I heard that was acceptable, Shad, to you as well, and the view of the community. So we'll get that moved down to high. It's unassigned at this point, so we will need to look at when this will come in and then who would be working on this particular item. So I think we've also cleared up. So the ownership, there's no change to ownership, and these are all covered under VOLTHA Core, owned by Ken and Sergio. So I think there's no update there. And then, Chad, I think I also heard you had some additional tickets to enter in JIRA.
Yes, I'll be doing that in the coming week. Yeah.
So then we can take a look at those, and if they're in by Tuesday, then we can look at them on Tuesday's call as well. And feel free to discuss them also over VOLTHA Discuss in the meantime, or if there are questions that come up after you enter them, they can go directly into JIRA also. So in terms of the timing for this item, so I do know that I'm hearing from ONF that this is a high priority item for them. We do need to kind of figure out when the community can pick up the work. I don't know if we're going to resolve that today. So I would suggest, we'll see if this is okay for Ken and Shad and Sergio, if everyone takes a look at it offline, and then we can look at timing. If there's something we can do over email on VOLTHA Discuss, then we can use the thread that's open on it, or we can just enter a proposed, well, let's see.
Julie,
we'd use the comment to put in a proposed time frame for it also. Yes, Sean?
Julie, I think there's a similar ticket open. To me, I think this is a little bit duplicate, right? The flow, individual flow, flow never get deleted. And Chip, I think Chip, I think you have the similar concern earlier, right?
Yeah, I brought that up during the lockdown, that it's something that we need to look at for 2.0. So I don't know. I didn't put any JIRA issues in though.
I think there was a one JIRA. So okay, I'll search for that.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else we need to discuss today with this item? So we need to get a picture on where this is going to go in 2.0 in terms of when the work can be picked up, and also who will be working on it. I haven't heard anyone else indicate that they have resources available to work on it today, so we'll leave it unassigned at the moment unless I hear someone step up.
So just assign it to me, and
okay.
and I'll get it done.
Let's see. Here you are. All right. Thank you, Sergio.
Thank you, Sergio.
Okay. All right. So let's. Were there any other items, Shad, that you had wanted to talk about on here? I know we also have a gap for ownership for the module ownership for the technology profiles. So right now on the tech lead, we have Sean Missett assigned for that, and we've got various work items assigned to different individuals as well, but we don't have formal ownership for this module yet. Is that something we can address today?
I mean, are you asking me? I don't know. I'm not involved in tech profiles. This is something Sean and sort of.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I thought we had
asking that to the group.
I thought we had a list of owners. I thought.
So we have on. Yeah. So what we did here is this sort of followed what was done for 1.0 in terms of assigning technical leads and contributors that didn't necessarily align one-to-one with the module ownership that was on the wiki. And so we have, for the tech profiles, oops, let me find the right screen. So Sean, we have you as the tech lead for the team, and then we've got Jono and Chad and David And my screen, I can't see everything. Hold on one second. And then I think we'll also have someone from Nexia working on this, but we hadn't mapped these over to official module ownership. So that was kind of my question, because on
well,
the
this
they
spans.
just show.
Yeah. So this spans multiple modules, right? So there's basically there's ONOS work, there's potentially work above the ONOS level. There's work on the interface between VOLTHA and ONOS. There's work within the core. There's work in the adapters, right? So in terms of the modules that we currently have that you were displaying.
Yeah, I guess it's now.
I mean, everything. It seems like everything gets mapped to VOLTHA core.
So
yeah. Part of my concern with the technical profile work right now is I don't think anybody's allocated to actually do the coding. I don't know, Sean. Did you guys have time? Because I thought last meeting there wasn't, and that's a problem. I think until there's actual someone writing code, it's hard to create a module owner.
Yeah. So Redis is taking the adapter for the edge core part of things. We're currently reassessing that as to whether we can apply resources to OpenOLT as well. So that's a discussion that's kind of going on. Hopefully, will be resolved by the end of the sprint, so we can start on the next sprint. We can go with that assumption for now. Just the adapters will be handled by Redis, the edge core and the OpenOLT, or just OpenOLT. We're just trying to figure that out right now.
Have we created all the stories around this yet?
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of stories in there. I mean, we could probably add some more, but I mean, like Jono has been assigned to stories in the core, like the OpenFlow adapter, the flow decomposer, those kind of stories. So around passing the technology profiles through. If someone needs to work on, using the existing etcd interfaces for creating the technology profiles, and we should probably have a meeting to discuss if we're going to do JSON blobs, just exactly, what the JSON looks like for that. I think we started to do that, but we just need to. I think you created a wiki page around that, David. I think if I put a little more effort into updating that, we can have the JSON defined.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, this is Mesut from Nesia. Actually, as you know, we are part of the technology profile, and we saw the stories that created the Jira that we now seeing in the screen. Also, we can help about these tasks, Jira stories, which is the part of the off agent and OpenFlow, the composer and other stuff. You can write also names. We are ready to say. If it is okay for everyone. Yeah. The Gamza and Koray will contribute to this part. They are, I think, in the call now.
Okay.
We can coordinate with these items with Jonathan as well.
Thank you. I think that's great.
And Koray.
And I'm sorry.
Koray. K-O-R-A-Y. Oh, no.
Yeah.
K-O-R-A-Y.
I actually just sent him a private note, say, hey, I never seen you before. Which company you're from?
Let me see here. Oh, I see the name on here. Okay, thank you. Okay, got it. All right.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's let me go back.
So I guess in terms of the module owners that we currently have, could you throw that list back up again? So I guess there's VOLTHA Core, and there's ONOS apps that we need updating. I guess northbound interface, that's northbound on the VOLTHA itself, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess.
By the way, Chameleon should just be deleted from that because Chameleon is no longer used. It's Envoy.
Okay. We'll get that cleaned up.
I mean, I can go make the update. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. All right. And then Sean Missett, was there anything else you wanted to look at on this page? We're looking through the list of the modules. Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so let's go ahead and go back. And also a reminder to everyone that we did extend the Thursday meeting by 30 minutes, so we'll be going an extra 30 minutes today. I forgot, I put that on the minutes from Tuesday. I forgot to remind everyone on the agenda I sent out last night. Okay, so I think the next item we were going to do was looking at the release planning and trying to get some updates here for the development sprints that would be required. So first page, we've gotten some updates now from NetCF for assignees for technology profiles, so thank you for that. And then I don't think we had any other updates on this page. We do have gaps on finding technical leads for some of the work. Is there a question from the community? I thought someone was going to say something. Okay. So I think the main ones we have right now that we need to address are ones we have the recent user stories added in. And so that's looking at security and then alarms and then also PM support. So a number of those stories are entered in the system now, and we need to start scoping out that work in terms of required effort and who will have working on those particular items. And I did add Chip onto the list here on the alarms and PM because he'll be working on that in conjunction with the OpenOMCI work, since there are some relationships there for that communication. And also, let me go back up to, let me find the right slide. While I'm talking about Chip, that he did provide, I think we mentioned this on a previous VOLTHA call, that he had mentioned that there is some seed code that AdTran has available that may facilitate the development work for the alarms and PM. And so he has offered that to the community if that is of benefit. Chip, I don't know if you want to add anything else there while we're talking about that.
No, it's just basically some things that after, as I built up our adapters from looking at the Broadcom and EdgeCore and all the other adapters, I tried to simplify it and just wanted to pass that along. It still needs some work, but I think it's a good start.
Okay, thank you, Chip. So related
to
yes.
Julie, Sean joined back again. For some reason, my router went down. Maybe it was
okay. That's why I didn't hear back from you. Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I mean, I guess we'll
so I hadn't realized that your bridge had dropped. So I had a question if there's anything else you'd wanted to look at on the VOLTHA module ownership page while we were over there. Do I need to go back to that?
Well, that's okay. I guess there was another core services or something. There was a module. I was just wondering how that was different from the VOLTHA core, and maybe someone answered that, but mine just dropped down. My router just dropped. So.
I think you probably dropped out before that question made it over to us.
Yeah. So I was just so there's the northbound interface with Volta. There's the Volta core is a separate thing. There's ONOS is a separate module. And then there was something called was it core services or something. Is that different from Volta core?
I am not finding that.
It was core something or other. I can't see
Core
the screen
platform.
right.
Core platform. That's you know, the things that don't make up the standard runtime of Volta. So, you know, installers and you know, the administrative functions around Volta, document restore, installer, all that stuff.
But I guess, I mean, that from a technology profile perspective, I guess that that would be kind of taken care of with the Volta 2.0 re-architecture, I guess, right? In terms of, you know, communicating with etcd and all those kind of mechanisms, communicating with the core.
Yes, that's part of the core platform. Like etcd, for example, would be part of Volta 2.0. It's already part of Volta 1.3, by the way.
Yeah.
So that's part of the platform, core platform versus the Volta core work. Yeah. Okay. All right. So in terms of, you know, aligning, you know, technology profile work, I guess that would already be kind of taken care of, I guess. So part of the technology profiles needs the you know, use of the interfaces, management interfaces to etcd to add and manage the technology profiles themselves. So is that part of the core platform module, or is that part of Volta core?
Sorry, I didn't follow your question. Do you mind repeating it?
Yeah. So one of the, you know, the work items around technology profiles is the ability to create technology profiles within the KV store etcd in this case. And so if I need to create and manage technology profiles themselves within the data store, is that part of the platform work, or is the platform module, or is that part of Volta core?
I'm trying to understand how that's work. What I mean, if we're agreed that we're going to just use standard etcd to kind of create, manage, modify profiles, what's the work that needs to be done? Is it creating a specific profile or what?
Yeah, I guess if it's already supported, I guess it doesn't need to be done. But I guess I guess we need to try it out. But I don't know if that's the story, or I mean, we need to make sure it works. I don't know if there's a work item in terms of, you know, we need to check it out. But,
right, and that's fair. So the wiki describes how to actually do that using etcd commands and curl. And so again, if the community's agreed, that's how we're going to go forward. I'm not sure there's any technical work that needs to be done. I think there does need to be stories to create specific technical profiles. Back to your point about we need to come up with a structure for that JSON that the adapter is going to use for XPON, for instance. But there's no implementation other than making sure etcd is running, which the Helm chart does.
Okay, all right. So I guess maybe a test story or something, just to create a set of, you know, known technology profiles and just make sure they can add and delete those profiles.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anything else, Sean?
I think that was it.
Okay.
Let's go back. Look at the module.
All right.
Okay. Yeah.
And then going back to this list, so while we've had discussion going on, I did receive a note from Jim at Mariner, and I'd like to give him an opportunity. It sounds like Mariner may be interested in taking up leadership on the alarms and PM support. So would you like to comment on that, Jim?
Great, thanks, Julie. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Very well.
Great, thanks Julie for giving me the spot here. I'll make it quick. I have had some discussions with Sean and his team from AT&T in regards to the my company's been listening in pretty intently over the past 3 or 4 weeks to the requirements that AT&T has presented in terms of, I guess what they sort of say is the minimum requirements from, I think that they gather based upon their LSBBT tooling. In regards to, let's say fault, PM, and alarms, and I think Mariner can contribute some effort there, and in fact take the lead position here. I think the overall goal would be, by the release 2.0 of VOLTHA, to be able to, let's call it, materialize those KPIs out of the various componentries into a northbound interface, so that it can be used as part of the MVP for VOLTHA 2.0. So, we are just kind of getting spun into it. I do see that we'll definitely be reaching out to folks like Chip at Adtran and others. So I will introduce myself more directly to those folks with the help of Sean. But we do look forward to participating and if possible, leading this effort.
Thank you, Jim. And Jim, Mariner has a lot of experience on A core with the ONF, so welcome them to be participating on the VOLTHA project here. Thanks.
And so, any objections from the group? Okay, so Jim, should I put your name down or just Mariner in general right now?
Yeah, you can put my name down for now, Julie, and we'll assign a tech lead once we get really rolling. I would expect by next week we'll be doing specific reach outs to individuals based upon our research to date.
Great. All right, thank you for that. And I think, as you're aware, we do have the recordings where some of the presentations were given. I think you were on the calls for those also, or at least for some of them. And then we do have a number of the user stories entered for alarm as well in JIRA. So thank you for that. And then on the security side, so Tom Moore is on, I believe he was on, and we have a number of the users. Oops, maybe Tom, are you still on? Yes, you are. Okay.
I'm on. Yes.
And so I know we have a number of the user stories entered for those. I think we just have them in for a couple of the epics, or are they all in right now? I didn't check.
Two of the 5 epics.
2 of them, right?
And then,
okay.
Yep.
And then we may need to have another effort on going through and prioritizing, what is MVP for 2.0 out of the list, because I know when we had the presentation, there's a pretty hefty list of requirements, and then figuring out what could be scoped into 2.0 for MVP, we may have some additional work. So we may need to call on you for assistance with that as well when we have a technical lead, so we can review that as a kind of in a combo process. So do we have anyone? So I know we've got our module owners. Let me go back to the module owners for let me reload the page on the security side. And so those are, is Girish on? Let me see. Yes, Girish and Sergio. So those are the module owners that we have for security. And then in terms of the 2.0 effort, who would kind of be leading or coordinating the work, I'm not sure who that would be. We don't have a name signed up yet. So any feedback from the group or from Girish or Sergio? Okay. Oh.
And just to share with the community, I had a talk with HCL. Actually, the members of HCL has been monitoring the VOLTHA TSD calls, and then they actually, Ranga was actually at the Dallas lockdown. I did mention the security portion of the work to them. So hopefully they can come back some positive response of taking on some of the work items on the security side. So Julie, if we don't have the update right now, I think maybe we can do more requests on the VOLTA discuss.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Any other comments from the group? So Tom Moore, we may need to just go ahead and start the prioritization process with you independently, and then when we get a tech lead assigned, then we can kind of do that, do a sync up at that point. Does that sound okay with you?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
and we'll get ahead. We'll be getting the rest of them in soon.
Great. Okay. And then another key item we have on here, so there's some ongoing discussion in court as well related to NEM that has some connections to the work that we were looking at here for the abstraction for FCAPS management. So this is all going to need to be coordinated, I think, with looking at the big picture here. But at this point, we don't have a technical lead for that either. And I think we're still in the process of getting the user stories in because wanted to have some more of the discussion or see the discussion related to NEM to help figure out how to position the user stories correctly.
I'd like to see
Julie,
the NEM concept.
Bill.
Yes?
When you say technical lead, that's not a developer for the module. That's an architectural lead. Is that correct?
It's typically one of the developers who's leading the development team and kind of coordinating the effort and making sure we get the big picture put together for that scope item.
Right, and
usually they'll be doing the updates for the story point estimates and other things as well.
I think the NEM itself needs to be disaggregated a little bit. It's right now it's a kind of a big black box. I think if we can call out its separate functionalities and then decide how those get broken up into modules and what belongs where, I think we'll be better off. And that's part of the bigger SIBA project. But I do think it needs to be disaggregated and broken out a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that was mentioned on may have been a CORD call the other day. Do I have Sarah? I don't see Sarah on. So did talk about trying to have some time on, as long as we're extending the duration of the Thursday calls, I think we'll have time for like the last 30 minutes usually to include some technical presentations as needed. And so I think we're looking at targeting, hopefully fairly soon, having that discussion here with the VOLTA group on NEM and how that needs to get broken up and what requirements belong in VOLTA and what belong elsewhere.
Yeah, I continue to believe that VOLTA is a source for data for FCAPS, and carriers are going to have their own FCAPS systems, and I think that needs to be worked out. I worry about funneling everything through NEM, and I know we've had part of that conversation before. I just think it needs to be fleshed out a bit.
Yeah, so I think if Sarah was on here today, I would ask him to talk to that a little bit, but since he's not, I'll talk with him later to see if we can find a time slot to bring in some of that discussion with the VOLTA group. So probably it will be on a Thursday call in the next week or possibly two, depending how much time is needed to have some of that, breaking them up into blocks.
Okay. Joe, this is...
Yeah, Julie, I did want to elaborate a little bit on this particular item because I think somebody had mentioned it. This one, you can't launch without kind of all of the above. So I did want to make sure that, the VOLTA folks who've got their stuff on track, at least to the extent you've got it so far, we've got to make sure we got a real good tie to that, either NEM or whatever you want to call it, because I can't have a gap there and still launch. So I am very interested in Tom Moore and Gasser and the equivalent of those folks that are from the other providers and teams, that they're really focused on this one because, one gap and you don't have a solution. So I just want to double check that we don't say, well, that's the stuff over there on the old ONAP team. So it's got to be tied together. So just don't assume, make sure there's a handoff between those teams and they know where the integration is.
So I wanted to also comment to David Baker's comment, and thank you, Bill, that this helps for the context. So So we had a meeting with ONF yesterday, and part of it's about process and moving things. So this is more technical. But David, they came with a solution, and also that was addressing the same point I wanted to make to them, that we think that the Kafka bus is a exposable interface from the Volta work that we're doing, and they said that their plan is to make that the default what do they call it, to the producer essentially to the northbound. So them shouldn't. The idea there is also minimize the work we need to do to get the Volta work done. So I think it's in that direction. I think that was a positive.
All right. Thanks for that. Appreciate that.
Yep. Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that the plan is a lot of that information will be start sharing with the full community pretty soon.
It's not just the Volta interface, right? I mean, it's essentially interfacing to ONOS.
Yeah, that's true.
So are we? It's part of the service creation is part of this mediation function as well. I'm guessing.
Yes, we touched on those things too. Yeah, thank you for bringing it up, Sean. We asked about those things. They came more with an alarms and PM focus yesterday, but we actually see an opportunity that there'd be a common. Well, one idea is whether the NetConf Yang interface layer for managing elements in the pod, functions in the pod, could be common between, or at least a common approach between the pod and then the Volta scope. Because we haven't found, essentially a settled on how we're going to do that yet, and then following up with the specific development path on that, and that's always been needed here to expose all the FCAPS management, the way that Mike Gasser is approaching it with references to Yang models, and so we had a quick discussion on that, and more needs to follow. But the other part was the orchestration within the pod. So NEM being based upon XOS components, that's fundamentally being addressed and needs to be exposed for an automation layer from a northbound.
Let me also make a comment. With respect to analytics core, we demonstrated active testing and passive monitoring, and I think thanks to Mariner, who was part of this. And we also have a set of slides that talks about how we can unify the FCAP functions across the core platforms. And I'm just wondering whether, we should pick that up as part of this effort.
So a good point there, thank you, is that the presentation from ONF yesterday did refer to this as an ACORD type approach for the alarms and PM scope. So starting with the alarms and PM scope, and then at the pod layer, our discussion with Mariner and Jim on this call about that was that there could be some correlation functions that could be done locally as needed between faults happening on the pod components with the VLT components, and we could build user stories for the priorities there. We're very general about it right now because I think we need to put our head around it, but and multiple inputs from different people on that. That's thank you for bringing that up. That's part that fits in with what's on the discussion today for alarms and PM support.
That'd be great. Yeah, I'm wondering if analytics core team can help out with some of these user stories, both generically as well as maybe specific to Volta.
Yes, that's a good point. There's some modeling as far as what's in our particular pod that might be very applicable to others as well. Tom, I actually am interested to know, are you in your thinking considering a peripheral pod approach for MCORD with XOS, so like this NEM layer? Is this a common functionality for the MCORD work that you're working on?
Right. Yes, it is. That was
Okay.
the intention, actually. Yes. The analytics core specifically was to be going across all the core platforms, and I think we could maybe capitalize on that, at least to look at, FCAP in a traditional way. I don't think it works with the cloud environments. So we need to probably apply some of core architecture and approach to FCAP.
Okay, Sean, I think Tom, then I think working with what goes forward here, my understanding there'll be an answer back about how the core work for NEM proceeds.
Sure.
I think in that forum, I think we can collaborate on common user stories there for different access technology.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, I think the next item we wanted to look at in the same slide deck is this one. Actually, these two in conjunction. So we're still trying to formalize a target release date, and we still have a number of unknowns in that process. And so here's what we've been working on. We've shown this before. And also, let me go back to another slide first. In one of our previous meetings, it was brought up that in addition to our final sprint for a release, we have for hardening and documentation. And then it was brought up that we should also have a sprint prior to that for integration testing in a Kubernetes clustered environment. And so that one has been added in here. And so what that did is when we go to the target, looking at target timelines, let me get to the right slide. So it modified the numbers over here, just decreased each one by one in terms of an estimated release date. So, I think what we've been trying to aim for here is a September, and this would be end of September release date. And in order to do that, it would only allow for 5 development sprints. And then we have a number of items that are still to be started, and then others that likely will extend beyond 5 development sprints as well. So we talked about possibly needing to go to 2.0 and then a dot release afterwards to follow up and complete the work, for example, on the updates to the edge core adapter that would be needed in order to bring it in line with the bottom-up discovery approach and the technology profile use as well. So that was one we already had flagged as is not expected to start until the next sprint, sprint 3. So we're a little over halfway through sprint 2 right now. And so if we are going to meet a September date, then that means we have 3 development sprints left after we finish up our current sprint. So that does not really give us a lot of time. So I think this is still a really big question in terms of what exactly would get delivered by this date. And then, we also looked at some other, just projecting out a little further. If it took 7 development sprints, that puts us at roughly the end of November or mid-November to late November, and then end of year or later if it needed to go beyond that. So this is sort of just helping us keep track of looking at the estimates we have and when work is expected to start, then what is our likely release date. So we still have items that need to get scoped in terms of development effort, story points, and then the resources assigned to them and so forth. So don't have a good sense of those yet. That's still TBD. Also not sure how long it's going to take for the technology profile work. So this one, I think we have one of the items is in sprint 2 currently. And then again, don't have a sense for how many sprints will be needed to complete that work. Not sure what else we need to do at this point for this. So Sean Missett and others that are working on technology profiles, what what are our next steps here? Do you think we need to have another breakout meeting with the group? Is that helpful? Or what's kind of our next step to figuring out the, I mean, we have a number of the JIRAs that are entered and assigned, but we haven't yet really gotten a sense.
Yeah, I think so. You know, from Redis's perspective, we're expecting 4 sprints for completing all the technology profile work in an adapter. Again, we're looking at whether we can apply more resources in this area to kind of that may speed that up. From the other stories that have been assigned, maybe the owners could either make an estimate of the number of story points. I better put down 8 for everything, I think. So, you know, it's the
okay. So we may need the assignees to update those.
Yeah,
stories then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you know, if anyone needs to discuss anything around the stories, maybe they could contact me directly, and we could have a one-on-one.
Okay. So if
Julie, we've just started to analyze the JIRA issues related to the OpenFlow part on meter bound part of the technology profile, and Gamze is drawing some flows related to the these issues, and is trying. Maybe we can discuss these flows together with the team or just with the technology profile team.
Okay. Now,
So maybe we could have
probably the larger team would like that.
So do you want to include it with the team meetings or a separate?
No, with the separate meeting, I think. Who is related with the technology profile, we can discuss these issues.
Okay. Maybe I can set that a meeting up, or Julie can coordinate that. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
So let's try. Sean, why don't you work with Netsia to see if you can find a time that works for both sides there, and then I'll see if we can. Once you have that, let me see if I can find something on the CORD calendar, and then if we can get the GoToMeeting bridge, then I can assist with that so we can have the recording afterwards. And then if I can't get the GoToMeeting bridge, then it doesn't matter who hosts it, I think.
Okay, I'll coordinate with Netsia and probably Jono as well.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, we can. We can provide the bridge if we need.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Let me coordinate that.
Okay, thanks,
Okay.
Sean.
All right. And then, Chip, I also wanted to check in with you if we have a sense, I don't know if we need to update the number of sprints that were estimated yet, or if you want to wait till the middle of sprint 3. I know we talked about, can't remember if it was mid-sprint 2 or sprint 3, if we needed to reevaluate story points and possibly update the number of sprints that were estimated.
Yeah, that's probably going to be middle of sprint 3, since a lot of the Foundry people haven't really come online yet.
Yeah, okay. So I'll leave this as is right now, but I, with the understanding that this number may go up depending on when those resources kick in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have some points in there for technology profiles as well, so we need to make sure we coordinate those right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
I'll come on that also, Chip.
Okay, thank you. I think those were the main items to look at here. So again, if we do want an end of September, then really we have just 3 sprints after the in-flight one that we have, and then we go into integration testing and then hardening. So that's going to put a lot of pressure on what would go in for the items where we still have to kind of kick off the work starting in sprint 3 or later. So that brings us probably to maybe our next point on the agenda, or no, I had it further down. It adds additional pressure to this, really identifying what items are truly required for MVP, and then what could follow up in say a 2.1 afterwards, and something like that. So please keep that in mind kind of when you're looking at things, because right now, and we don't have a number of the story points in yet, so this number is just going to get up. So we have a huge amount of work that has been identified as needed for 2.0, and we, this is obviously well beyond what we can cover in 3 more sprints after our current one. So we need to take a good look at the backlog. So I know Sean and I did some additional work yesterday trying to call out a few more items, and then we need to try and continue to do that going forward. So I'm not sure we'll have time to get to that today, but I wanted to just touch base with the group on what we're looking at for the timeline, and see if there's any feedback from the group also on the timeline, the proposed release date, and so forth, and how we get a path there. We also do have, I can bring this chart up. So I think this is on the wiki as well. So here's the rough timeline we have here with the sprint 6. If we are, this is subject to change here, but the target, if it is end of September, has that sprint 6 for looking at the integration testing with the Kubernetes cluster, and then the final hardening and documentation sprint.
And Julie,
yes.
I updated that a little bit. One thing, the difference a little bit is the third quarter lockdown, technical lockdown. I think with the massive work going on in 2.0, probably any technical meeting face-to-face will probably just waste the development time. I'm proposing moving the next lockdown in the 4th quarter, when we're getting ready for preparing the VOLTHA 3.0 features. So if people has any comments, let me know. But I think right now, based on the work we need to do, I think the time will be better spent on getting all the 2.0 release ready. So.
Yeah, I agree with that, because we've got a lot on our plate right now. Any feedback from others in the group? Any comment?
That will work from our perspective as well. Bora speaking.
Hi, Bora.
Hi.
Thank you, Bora. Okay, then I think let's go back to the agenda, and we'll start looking over, with the time we have left, looking over the new issues that have come up, since we haven't had time to look at these in much detail on the calls for the last couple of weeks. So we'll start going through, see what we can get through on those, and then not sure if well, okay, let me ask the group which would be a better use of the time right now. So we can review the new JIRAs, or we can go through items in the backlog and see if we can make judgment calls on items that could be pushed out to a future release.
Julie, I think since you and I, we've been working on that since yesterday, let's continue to work that offline on the MVP related stuff. So let's focus on the new item.
That sounds good to me. All right. Any other views? And then other people, please feel free to reach out to Sean or myself if there are items you see in the backlog that look like they could either be closed out or are no longer relevant, or could potentially be moved out to a later release. And I know a number of you have been quite responsive when we are putting in our questions in JIRA, asking if we can close out items or get updates. So thank you for all that work in the background as well. Much appreciated. And then I think we'll go on to the issues, and we'll start, let's see, 8:38. I don't know if I want to start from the top or from the bottom. Let me get the right list up here. Oh, we have a new one, so 9:10 now. Okay, so 9:10, this one is just opened by Tom, actually, about, looks like a documentation here on the consumer topic and alarm event messages, types, and message format. Okay. And this is for, yeah, so how we have northbound systems, how they will be consuming the alarms and events. And so this looks like a documentation of that interface for the consumers. Tom, anything you want to comment on here? Or questions from the group? Okay. And then 909, we did talk about this one at the start of the call, so I think we can go down the list then. Open OLT, OLT delete. And so this one is after performing a delete of an OLT, the device and flows are persisted in ONOS. And so we need to be able to delete logical device and ports and propagate changes to ONOS. And let's see, I don't know if we have, I don't see Jonathan Davis on the call. So any questions from the group on this one?
Julie, so yes. this is one more area where we see that we need support from the VOLTHA core, that is that device agent and adapter agent in this area. So I'll either myself or Jonathan Hart, Jono, would be raising a Jira for this as well. So I think that there's some functionality that is required in the core for this to happen. So this to be done architecturally properly.
So you're saying the flows in this bug, the flows are persisted in ONOS. ONOS, when it pushes flows, it keeps the flows, right? So if a flow is removed from a device, but it's not removed through ONOS, ONOS will try to repush the flow, or is this I'm trying to understand what's actually happening.
So yeah, David. What happens is that when either device is disabled or deleted, let's say an OLT is disabled, just like we have flow decomposition where the core figures out that a flow has to be decomposed and sends individual messages to the OLT and the ONU adapters. The same thing is not happening in the for example, the disable or delete case. So it's actually the OLT adapter then has to go and send inter-adapter messages or call back into the core to clean up or disable the ONUs that are associated with it, for example. We believe that this should happen just like how flow decomposition happening. They call it device decomposition, where device management should also be decomposed in the core, because the core knows that the tree of devices. So if anything happens on a particular element in this tree, it knows that the other device, it knows about which other devices are affected, and it should be calling in, making those calls to the other devices, as opposed to the adapters trying to do it themselves.
No, I like the idea of coordination through the core, and that's fine. I guess I'm trying to understand is where the flows are being persisted and where they're being repushed, right?
I think this is a manifestation of that core issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Again,
I think
if the flows are in ONOS, ONOS will continually try to push the flows. If you're saying when an ONU goes away, a port should go away and a port delete should go to ONOS. Okay, I get that. I don't completely understand, I think.
Yeah, I think that should happen. I think the specific ticket is saying when the OLT device gets deleted in VOLTHA, then also the logical device associated with it needs to go away as well. And then so ONOS sees the device go away. Because right now it's not necessarily happening.
Well,
Okay.
I also think we probably need to make a statement around device creation and deletion in terms of, is it going to be automatic based on the bottoms-up approach, or can I pre-provision a device through the FCAPS mechanism? Because now you basically have to distinguish the mode of operation, or at least the way an ONU was created, to determine the behavior, right? I mean, if it's all okay, it's discovery, delete automatically, then that's one thing. But now if I can come and create an ONU, that's another.
I think and we had a little bit of this discussion with the NEM and the SIBA and all that kind of stuff. I think that definitely there are objects that are the persistent objects that come down, that, you know, assign a name and a port and an ONT ID from an upstream view, that obviously don't go away. But if there's dynamic objects that are more related to the dynamic nature of how VOLTA is running, and those are up in ONOS as well, I think those possibly could go away. Now, if you know that you have a service provision from the top down that is using some of those resources, I guess one of the questions would be, where did the delete come from if it didn't come from the top down delete? So I mean, I think that you know, you would think that if you didn't have a top down delete, you wouldn't be getting a delete request that flows all the way down. But I definitely think that there's some management of that, and from what I'm hearing, that's possibly potentially up in the NEM layer. So hopefully that means, in my mind, if you guys are doing dynamic stuff, you should send the dynamic stuff up, and NEM would handle it. Whether it's, I wouldn't think VOLTA would need to be aware of the top down in my current view of what I've heard so far about NEM and SIBA.
So delete, I guess the delete case is, it seems like, you know, let's say you basically notify something above VOLTA that an ONU was disappeared. Now, something higher than VOLTA would decide whether I need to go delete that ONU or not. And you know, so
I would think
yeah,
so. Yes.
So
I would agree.
It seems like an explicit delete would be needed to remove an ONU, right? I mean, because it may have just gone away and then it comes back, and that's okay. But
so isn't an ONU a port message? Just an open flow port message? You know? Add delete port, and then it's up to whoever responds to that decides what actions to take?
Yeah, it seems like it. I mean, I don't think the core should be doing anything automatically about deleting things, right? It seems like that behavior should be controlled from above.
I think, yeah, I agree with that.
Issue then.
The issue that we're talking about is that, you know, right now when you pre-provision an OLT and create the physical OLT device and then enable it, a logical OLT device gets created that corresponds to that physical OLT, right? The logical device in VOLTA gets created.
Okay.
And what this issue is talking about is the state management of that logical OLT device, or that logical device. So when you delete or disable the physical OLT, then, you know, corresponding actions need to happen on that logical device. It needs to be disabled, or it needs to be deleted from VOLTA. And right now the adapters are doing that. Each adapter is doing that themselves. And this ticket seems to be saying that this needs to be implemented on the urban OLT adapter.
Okay.
But I think the point that Shab was making was that this is also another approach is that instead of having each adapter do the state management itself, we could lift this up into the core and have the core do this in a consistent way for all OLT adapters.
Yep, and that's fine. So the idea is I go into the CLI and I type disable a physical device, and we just want to see that reflected in the virtual device.
Yeah, the logical device should be deleted or disabled or disconnected from ONOS or whatever the appropriate action is, but it should be consistent for all OLTs.
Yeah, I think some verbiage around that makes sense. I just didn't get that from the current verbiage, I think.
And I guess the same for ONUs, right? I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because ONUs correspond to ports on that logical device. And right now, the state management, the mapping between physical ONUs and logical ports is, again, left up to the adapters. But it would be nice if the core would sort of take care of some of the state management and manage this mapping in a consistent way.
Okay. Can we extend this JIRA then, or to kind of describe that story that Jono just talked about? Because I think that's the story.
I think that might be another JIRA. I think this one may be narrowly focused on implementing this on the OpenOLT adapter in the same way that it's done on other adapters right now. But then there's probably another story about the lifting the state management up into the core that I was talking about.
Okay. So is someone going to add that story?
Yeah, so that was my next question. Jono, is that one you're going to be adding, or Shad, were you thinking of adding that one?
I think, yeah, Jono and I would, yeah. This specific one, Jono can do it, but I think there are a couple of more issues that I think we'll be adding.
I have to say, this discussion basically come up a few times, and I don't fully understand what is exactly the standard behavior about the open flow. You know, whether the device got removed and the flow stays on or something like that. I think we need to create a more formalized model regarding to how exactly things being provisioned and how the flow should stay. So, shall we have a follow-up? This more you know, a scope-wise discussion regarding how we can formalize, implement this for the access network? Or everybody has understanding other than me?
No, Sean, I think you're right. I mean, every adapter does its own thing. And that's why we are saying that if we normalize this in the core, that an OLT delete or an OLT disable or an ONU disable or whatever device management action is handled. The basic behavior is handled in the core, and then each adapter actually does exactly what the core tells it. Then we have a normalized behavior across all adapters, and that normalized behavior we can discuss. What does OLT disable mean? What does OLT delete mean? Right now, there's a bit of it's a bit of gray area. Every adapter chooses to do its own thing, and I think that's what we're saying. That let's decide to normalize this behavior and move it into the core.
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense when we see kind of behavior being implemented in one or more adapters that becomes a candidate for behavior that moves up.
So I will take on that, and then maybe we can have a separate call for that.
Okay.
Just be aware that it's a good idea to move things into the core, but this would be obviously work required in the core, but then there would be work required in all the adapters to adjust after that work is done.
Yep. And considering there's going to be work in all the adapters when we move to containerization, you know, it's a prime time to do these other things as well. So, and again, just to iterate, right? Anybody can contribute code to the core. It's so if there's issues that people need to bring up after they're discussed in the community, those JIRAs can be handled by anybody.
Yep.
Thank you, David, Shad, and everyone else. Okay, so we've got about 4 minutes left, so we're obviously not going to get through all 70 of our new issues. So let's do a high-level just discussion on the news stories that, David, you've entered on the logging evolution, and I think maybe
all of which are going to be considered they don't need for the viable product probably, and will be bounced to the next release because it's all about logging, and no one cares about logging.
Okay, so are you suggesting that we defer this discussion to later?
I actually think logging for troubleshooting and debug purposes is critical for a viable product, but typically logging actually ends up at the bottom of the queue.
Yeah, but that was the view out of the lockdown as well. Was this is on the critical path for MVP. So let's see. Do I still have? I think
I
Sean
basically
Carter left.
took
Mike
the
Astor, I see
wiki.
you on here. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I basically took the wiki page and tried to condense that into an epic and some JIRAs for that epic. So please, and I still haven't. I've tried to reach out. We just haven't been able to connect yet on it. But if people have comments, I'm still very much open to feedback on where we go with logging. If people agree or disagree or want additions.
Okay. And then, I think we should have the community take a look here at these, and then, in the context of what you'd mentioned earlier about, will these end up being part of MVP, or will they be deprioritized in order to take on other work instead? So, we do need to have the community look at this and decide which items need to remain as MVP for the 2.0 release. So, and I have 2 minutes left, so really I am about out of time. Why don't I go ahead and wrap up? So we will continue on Tuesday trying to cover some new issues and get updates on the sprint. So next week is the final sprint, final week for Sprint 2. And I did have just a high-level question on here, if there are any defect fixes that could be pulled in for Sprint 2 in the remaining week. So I know I ask this pretty much every meeting, and still an open question. If there are people who have cycles that they can do some work on the open defects, that would be greatly appreciated, because we always have a need there. And then Sean, so Sean Ying, you and I can continue kind of going through the backlog and doing some more review and seeing if there are items that we could consider as candidates for moving out of 2.0. And I encourage everyone else. Yes.
We have reduced 1 or 2 sprints, right? So.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, we were at about 57 sprints. So we're down to 29 because we've had some work complete as well. But we also have a number of the stories, like the alarms. Those stories don't have story points yet because we need that estimate once we have a developer who's going to kind of get an estimate for the work required for those stories. So the number will go up, but we'll then keep taking a look at what needs to be there for that 2.0 and see if there are items that could be pushed out to a 2.1. And would appreciate feedback from the community on that as well. Because again, you see we've still got 271 issues in the backlog. And in the release, you can also look at what's in the release this way, and 222 issues are currently in 2.0. And so that leaves us with 160 to do, plus the number that have not been entered into JIRA yet. So we've got a lot of prioritization remaining to do in order to come up with a realistic timeline and a clear identification of what will be in there for MVP. So with that, I'm out of time. Last comments from the group before we drop for today.
I just want to say, people really, stepping up, doing a lot of work, like Nestia and NTT and everybody, even Sienna and Red Estes and Marion and whoever, and Atran. So, plus other potential engagement, and then AT&T also stepping up.
John, ONF as well, I think.
Yeah, ONF, yeah, of course. And then so I see, that's the reason why I never mention names, right? So, but I think the 2.0 has been quite an exciting process, so it's keep working hard. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. And also, I appreciate everyone being willing to spend the additional 30 minutes so that we could, do some discussion on some of these issues, and we'll continue that next week. I believe often there's a meeting after the Tuesday meeting, and so we do have a hard stop there. But on the Thursdays, our plan was to continue to extend those by 30 minutes as long as it's free on the court calendar, while we're trying to sort of, well underway. So I think we'll be continuing with the 90-minute sessions on Thursdays for a while, so that we can also continue to have time for technical presentations on some weeks. Okay.
And the last word, I do encourage people, if you're located around the California area and the Bay Area, come to ONS more often. You can see a lot of activity going on here. So that's why I'm here more often these days too. So it's good.
All right.
Thanks.
I will go ahead and close the bridge. Thank you, everyone.